right, Kevin, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. I wanted to start off by going back to your earliest experience and then kind of walking through that maybe up until now, and then we'll get into some of the more interesting questions that I have.
Okay, that's quite a bit to cover. I'd like to
Sure.
thank you for inviting me on your podcast because, as I said before we started recording, that I can't get my message out without people like yourself. It's a team effort. So, thank you for inviting me on your podcast. I do appreciate it.
Of
Yes. So,
course, it's an honor.
okay, well, thank you. Yeah, I suppose we better start at the beginning. It's always a good place to start. Um, I was 3 years old, and my mother had engaged a photographer to come and take some photographs for a family album. And we were duly washed and bushed up. And my mum had knitted a new green cardigan for me. I have the photograph actually. And when the photographer came, he lifted me up onto the dining room table to get a better elevated position, I think, for the photographs. But from that position, I looked around the room and I realized that my conscious energy was in a physical body again. And how my conscious energy was looking out from the physical. And that was my first recollection of this incarnation, as we might say. So quite interested at a young age. And then from that period on, I was always looking out. I was always still in awe that I was in a physical body. And I was looking at it was like a symbiosis, my conscious energy and my physical body in one, as it were. So that was my first encounter of realizing who I was as a human being. So very interesting. And then nothing happened, just the usual childhood playing, doing the things that kids do. And then when I was 8 years old, I was taking a bath at home. And I was always sensitive as a child to the frequencies within the room around where I was. And there was a change in the frequency within the bathroom. And then two beings appeared to the right of the bath. They were frightened me to death at the time. They were both very attractive, human in appearance. Both had shoulder length blonde hair, wearing a blue jumpsuit type garment, and they had deep blue eyes. They were speaking telepathically to one another, which I could understand. And they were speaking about me, not to me. And I know these two now. I've had contact with them all my life. The male is called, his name is Ort, and Dee is a female. She's his partner. And they tell me that they are from Andromeda. They are Turians and fifth dimensional beings. Anyway, the conversation went something like, Dee said, is this the boy? And Ort, that's the male, he said, yes, this is the boy. And then Dee questioned him and said, are you sure this is the boy? Look at him. He's small, he's uneducated, and he's frightened by our presence. And she was correct. I was terrified. And Ort replied, yes, this is the boy. I will guide him. I will teach him. There was some other conversation, and then they left. As I say, I was terrified. I didn't get out of the bath. The water went cold. I was shivering in the bath, actually. My mother came in to see why I was still in the bath. I told her about the two beings, and she said it was just my imagination. And it wasn't. Clearly, I've now had contact with D and others all my life. I'm now 69. So, and Art was true to his word. He has educated me. They introduced me to others, and it wasn't until about 4 years ago I got up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, and there's a bright light outside the bedroom window. The light came into the bedroom and lit up like a myriad of butterflies, but just pure white light. And then Orton D materialized at the bottom of the bed, and after pleasantries, I asked what was the reason for their visits, bearing in mind I'm used to seeing them. And they said, Kevin, we would like you to speak out about your lifelong contact with us. We would like you to write about it. And I remember saying that I don't mind talking about it or speaking about it, but I'm not a writer. And Art said, well, we will continue to guide you. We will continue to teach you. In fact, Kevin, you will write 2 books. I've written one and had that published now. I've got the second one written, but haven't had it published. So that was the reason why I started speaking out. The following day, I told my wife about the visit, and the following morning, I started writing the first book, Spiritual Consciousness, A Personal Journey. So that's why I speak out now. I hadn't done up until then because my brother knew. I told him when I was a child that he was aware. He didn't have any contact. And when I met my wife and we started going out, I told her about the extra abilities and the ETs and being able to see deceased people. And she just accepted it, and we're still together to this day. So that would be the second occasion. I say the initial with the understanding consciousness inside the physical, and then the actual visit with the in the bathroom. After that, I've been 9 years old, and I was at home. It was a Sunday. I remember the day. I had some friends round. We'd been playing board games and things, and it got to about 5 o'clock, and it's time for them to go home for their tea. So I showed them. We packed up the games, and I showed them out the back door. And when I turned round, I knew there was a vibrational frequency in the home that wasn't there before. So I went looking for it. As I said, I was sensitive to these frequencies. And I went in the living room, then I went upstairs, the bedrooms, the bathroom, the kitchen. I came back down to the living room where I felt it was strongest, and I was drawn towards the window. I looked behind the drapes, the curtains, and there was an orb there, an orange orb, about 4 to 6 inches across, slightly vibrating, and it was orangey yellow in colour. There was no communication from it. To cut a long story short, it stayed for a week, and it left on Friday. I came home from school at 4 p.m. and I opened the back door and knew instantly that it had gone. I know what that was now. I didn't at the time. That was Ort, the male. That was his pure conscious energy without his physical. And I suspect at that time they activated some of my DNA, because immediately after that, I was able to separate my consciousness from the physical and travel outside the physical body, the physical reality that we see. So, but I've met them many times now like that. So, yeah.
Is when you separate your body like that, is that just astral projection?
Well, my understanding is there are like three things you can do in relation to expanding your consciousness and using it. And the first would be like remote viewing. That's a higher level of consciousness than we are when we're in the physical. And then it would be the astral travel. That's another level of consciousness. And then above that would be what I'm able to do, separate another higher frequency, separate the conscious energy from the physical, and just travel as pure conscious energy. So my understanding is there's those three levels of consciousness that we're able to access if we can all do that. We just need to train and learn how to do it. So I'm nothing special in relation to that. The only difference is I've had the education, and I've got friends that teach remote viewing now. So it's fairly common. It's understood now is remote viewing. Maybe astral travel. People, I don't know whether people are teaching that now, but people do talk about it. There were groups that astral travel. There's groups, I think, that some astral travel together. I mean, we're certainly evolving as a species. We couldn't talk about these things when I was a child.
Right.
You know, it was taboo. You'd be delusional or a lunatic or whatever. So, but now
lock you up,
which is good.
They'd put you in an institution or something back then.
Yeah, they would. Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah.
So I remember you were saying something once about how you were on a paper route. Was that before or after this experience, or were you getting into that?
Okay. Well, no. The next thing would be I was 9. No, I've done that. 9 years old with the Ort, with his consciousness. The next encounter, I had a paper round when I was 4 years old, and every time I left the house to go and do the paper round, a UFO would appear above the house, and then on the way, a second UFO would appear, and then they would follow me around the paper round, and then when I finished the round, one would usually go back and they'd change direction and go back the way it came, and the other one would just go straight up into space. And when I saw these UFOs, I was always aware that there was someone behind the hedge, behind the wall. I could feel that frequency. So on one occasion, I said, "I know you're there. Can you show yourself?" And these two small grey beings stepped out from behind the hedge of the wall. And I wasn't frightened. I asked what they wanted, and they said that there was some people that would like to meet with me. And I said, well, I've got my paper round to finish, and then I've got to go to school. And they said, well, you can finish your paper round, and we'll have you back in time for school. So I agreed to go with them. And I was taken to a mothership. And the reason why I suspect it was a mothership was because the size of the hangar, it was absolutely huge, like a big football field or even bigger. That was just a hangar. And all these different shaped crafts that we see in our atmosphere that people have seen, that people are taking photographs of, there are all those different shapes and sizes in this hangar. And I was led to a door and then down a corridor and into an amphitheater. And in that amphitheater, there was a large group of different species as the audience, as it were. I now know that they were the delegates. And then at the front of the amphitheater were the 8 beings, Orton D being the first 2. And then I was taken down to the front and I was introduced to all 8. That was the reason I was there. I thought I was there as a small human specimen to be paraded, but I wasn't. And clearly, that I've learned that since then, I didn't know that then, but that's a galactic council, and I refer to them as the Council of 8. And I'm still in contact with all 8 to this day. And some of the others have assisted with my education, but it's mainly been Art that's done the educating.
You're still in contact with them to this day. You know, what does that look like? Is that every day, every month, every year?
Okay, that's a very good question, actually. That I'm aware when there's one of them came into the room now, I would be aware of the change in the vibrational frequency. But I've been educated in all the modalities that they use for contact, so I can make contact with any of them at will when I want, using telepathic communications, which is one of the modalities that they use. And I've been taught that over the years to where I'm now comfortable and confident using that modality of contact. And how I learned that, I think that they would wake me up, say the middle of the night, say 1:11 a.m. There's always some synchronicity, and they would give me a telepathic message. I'd wake up. When those things happen, I always ask for confirmation. So on this particular occasion, I walked into the bathroom, and from the bathroom, I can see a street light. And I said, you've just woke me up and given me this telepathic communication. Can you confirm it's come from you by turning the street light off? And the street light went off immediately. So that was fine. That was good enough for me. So I went back to bed. They woke me up again about 8 o'clock in the morning. It's daylight. They gave me the second part of the message. And again, I walked into the bathroom. It was daylight now. And I said, right, I repeated the message, the first and the second part. And then I said, if this information has come from you, can you turn the street light on? Bearing in mind it was off now because it was daylight. And the street light came on immediately. So, and when you do that all your life and ask for confirmation, then you understand the telepathic abilities that we have. And that's what the higher conscious beings use. They use mental telepathy. And really, it's just an extension. They're using consciousness itself as the conduit. If you think of the consciousness as like a radio wave, you can tune into that signal and then receive the signal. And that's really what conscious energy is. And I'm sure we all have this ability when we're born of telepathic communications, but we don't use them. We're not taught how to use them. Again, it would have been taboo many years ago. You couldn't even talk about it. But I speak with many experiencers now, and many have an understanding of the telepathic communication. And it would appear that the experiencers have been educated to different levels within consciousness itself, within their own contact, and within the experiencers groups. We are still learning ourselves, and we share information, and that helps others to develop their particular skills that they've been given, really, or help to evolve. We already have them. It's just a matter of using them and evolve. I always equate it to my brother's a retired aircraft engineer. And say you've got a 747 and it breaks down somewhere and the engines aren't working, he can go and repair it. I can't. I know nothing about aircraft at all. So, and that's how it is with the extraterrestrials. They've educated certain people in certain areas. And my area of expertise is consciousness and communication.
Mhm. So you mentioned that everybody has these latent skills. Other than getting direct education from some kind of ET, what do you think sort of hinders people from using these skills? Is it toxins in the environment, diets? Is it just not believing that it's possible? Conditioning, all this other stuff?
Yeah, I think all of that. Uh,
Yeah.
and there are many things in there that you've said. There are toxins and things within our diets, within our atmosphere, and things within our foods. But again, society doesn't allow us to do it because we're indoctrinated from birth to the society that we see that we are involved in. And that's done on purpose, I'm sure, to keep us under control. And the reason why I was educated further was initially, obviously, I was contacted by them. But then when I got to 16 or 17, I tried to find other people that had these abilities. And we didn't have cell phones then, we didn't have the computers, the internet. So it's very difficult to find information. So I always asked friends and family in a third party. Yes, I would say I've got a friend of mine who travels outside of his physical body. Do you know anybody else that can do that? And they all said, no, it must be delusional or whatever. So after searching my own family and friends, I then reached out to Art one evening and I said, Art, I know there's a lot more to this. Can you come and show me? And he did. He continued the education. Yeah. So I think we all have these abilities. And since I've been speaking out, I've met others. In fact, it's quite interesting. When I wrote my first book, Spiritual Consciousness, A Personal Journey, I went around my friends and said, I'm writing a book. I told them what I was writing the book about. And they said, oh, Kevin, let me tell you about my experience. And bearing in mind, some of these friends I'd known for many years, and they've never mentioned them. So some of them are actually in that book. So we all have these experiences, but we don't talk about it. But again, because of ridicule, and our society doesn't allow it. But once you get into a group of people that have I meet with many experiences now, and some of their abilities are just amazing, So yeah.
Yeah, I would bet that most people have had some kind of contact experience or something mystical that they can't explain with, modern science. If you just ask them and they're open with you.
Yes, and then the other thing is because we are spiritual beings, or consciousness in the physical body, we can ask our guides. We all have guides, but again, we're not taught that you can reach out and ask your guides. I've asked all my life because I ask as if I'm asking my grandparents or your aunt or your uncle, but I ask the higher conscious beings. And I was told by Art on one occasion that I was part of their extended family. And only my physical is in the third dimension, where their physical is in the fifth dimension. And the only difference between the dimensions are the vibrational frequencies that life exists at. So if we see life and consciousness with the different levels, and then that explains it. They did give me an equation for calculating the different frequencies of the different dimensions. So we have to change. We have to educate ourselves in these new sciences in relation to understand that, and that's part of my role. I think I don't see myself as an educator. I just tell the stories. Right. And if by doing that educates people, that's fine. And I'm open to people contacting me and discussing it and things. So I'm just sharing the information. But I feel quite privileged and grateful to have been educated to this level by my guides, although they be extraterrestrials. They're still my guides. And in fact, in the book, I also mentioned contact with my deceased family and friends, because when the physical dies, the conscious energy just goes to a higher level of consciousness where it's still alive and it still exists as pure conscious energy. So it's all, most of this stuff is hidden from us. Although I've seen more and more people now talking about it, people who are into the spiritual side of who we are, they know a lot of this already. And in fact, it was quite interesting when I I looked at my book. I thought, well, where am I going to promote this? I thought, well, it's talking about spiritual consciousness. I'll have a look if there's any spiritual churches around where I live in Florida. And when I was a kid, we had one spiritual church, and that was it. I think not many people went. It was a bit taboo subject. And I looked, and there was over 100 spiritual churches. So
Wow.
people are interested in the spiritual side of who we are. So,
Mhm.
so it's quite. I find it fascinating still in relation to. I'm privileged that I've been given this information. I'm privileged and grateful that I'm able to share it, but I can only share it because of the technologies that we have now. Like we're
Mhm.
talking here on Zoom. Without that technology, this information would have been fairly useless. I wouldn't be able to get it out there. So
It'd be a lot harder to do it. We'd have to be in person. Um, so the on the note of disclosure, because that's part of your mission, where do you think we are when it comes to government disclosure? Are they cooperating, not cooperating? How's that going?
I think that's a very good question. I think the governments just go around in circle. They don't want us to know. They don't want to know. Our human history is denied us. Our galactic history is certainly denied. And I respect our governments. You know, they do their best, but they don't want us to realise that we are much more than we are taught within the limited education systems that we have. And I suspect that's part of the control system in relation to keeping the large populations under control. So I know the government do come out from time to time with little bits of information, but that's just a small amount, and then it disappears, and then a little bit more might come out. So I think for those of us like myself, we already have disclosure because we've already researched it, we've looked into it ourselves. We have our own experiences. So we have disclosure. So the next stage would be the reveal globally of our ET star family's ambassadors' presence. And they do have ambassadors, just like we do here on Earth. So the next stage will be a request, I'm sure, from a group of experiencers to meet with the extraterrestrial ambassadors. But I don't see them as extraterrestrials. I just see them as higher conscious beings who've got better technology that they've developed. And I'm sure part of their history, they were like us with limited technologies, limited knowledge and understanding of consciousness. But because they're an older species, they've learned and developed. And now I know the group that I'm in contact with, they tell me that they're here to assist with the evolution of humanity. And to do that is part of the education and the education about consciousness itself. And when we realize that conscious energy, if we think of it as a radio signal, it can be used for communication, it can be used for travel, it can be used for healing, education, creation, and co-creation. And when we understand all that, we will evolve to a level of understanding that the extraterrestrials that I contact with, they understand all that, and that's where they are at. And we need to get to that level. I'm already at that level, but that's because I've been educated by them. Without that, I would just be like my brother. I'd be retired, and I wouldn't have the knowledge that I have. So again, I want to express that I'm nothing special. It's just an education that I've had, and we're all able to achieve that without a doubt. Even you, Jay, you can do it.
Oh, I believe it. I got some experiences myself.
Oh, okay, that's good.
Why do you think that they chose you specifically for this?
Okay, well, my understanding is that I don't think they chose me. We
Okay.
have to go to the higher levels of consciousness to understand the soul level. Within consciousness itself, as I mentioned, we have these different levels like third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh dimension. And then you can go up to the really high dimensions and you'll get into the angelic realms. And then above that, the watchers. And then above that, source energy or soul energy. And I suspect that, and again, we have to have an understanding of all this. I suspect from the soul energy source or source energy, I chose to come down here at this moment in time and incarnate in a physical. Now that's huge for most people. I understand it because of my understanding of my education, as it were. It's normal to me. I'm quite happy with that. It dots all the I's, crosses all the T's, and it's very logical in relation to who we are as a species. So I don't think I was chosen. I think I chose as a higher conscious being without a physical at that time, chose to incarnate at this period in our history. Yeah.
Okay. I remember in one of your interviews, you were talking about how you went somewhere and you met family or
Right.
previous.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that was probably the next contact I had. I'd
Okay.
explained that I'd tried to find other people and that had these experiences, and I wasn't able to. So one night I went to bed. I held out my hand and I said to Art telepathically, Art, I know there's a lot more to who we are. I need some more information. Can you come and show me? If you ask, they will help you. So uh, I fell asleep. He came, he took hold of my hand. I left my physical body. I looked down, I could see it asleep. And we left through the window. We went round the subdivision, just flew around, and then we came back into the window. I could see my body asleep. And then I went back into my body. The following morning, I thought, oh, that was cool. But I wasn't certain whether I was dreaming or not. So I thought the following night I would do the same. So same routine. I got into bed. I held out my hand. I relaxed and I fell asleep. And I asked Art to come and show me some more. He came, took hold of my hand. We went out through the window. On that occasion, we went down into Leeds city centre in the UK, where I lived at the time. I recognised the hospital, the university where I worked as a technician at the time, the town hall, and the streets. And then we came back to my apartment through the window. My body was asleep, and I went back into my body. And then the third occasion, I was still unperturbed. I wasn't certain whether I was sleepwalking, dreaming, or whatever it was. So, but I was concerned about going out through the window because we were 3 stories up and it was concrete pavement below. So, third night, same routine. Art came and I said, he said, are you ready? I said, yes. But one thing, I said, can we go out through the roof? Because I'm not happy going out through the window because I'm still not certain whether I'm dreaming or sleepwalking. So we went out through the roof. And all subsequent journeys were out through the roof. But then to expand on that, I traveled with him quite extensively doing that. And he showed me many things. On one occasion, he came to me and said, Kevin, I'm going to take you somewhere special tonight. Are you willing to go with me? I said, yes, I am. So he took hold of my hand. I left my body. I looked down. I could see myself asleep. We went out to the roof. And then we just kept going up and up and up and up. And I saw the earth, not unlike it is behind me now, getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And then we went into a higher dimension. And as I've mentioned earlier, the dimensions are just the frequencies. When we went into that dimension, there was a line of 30 people standing there. At the front of the line was my deceased father. He was stood up, he was tall, he was 6 foot. I'd never seen him standing because when I was born, he was in a wheelchair all his life. And he greeted me, a big smile on his face. And he said, Kevin, I'm going to introduce you to your family, going back over 30 generations. And the feeling of love that emanated from that group of people was really quite overwhelming. I'd never felt anything like that before. Anyway, we started off down the group. My father introduced me to the different people. They had what appeared to be a physical, although they were deceased. They showed me a physical. We communicated telepathically. I went down the line until I got halfway down the line. And then they no longer showed me the physical as I initially saw them. It was a pure conscious energy orb, the one as I described earlier, 4 to 6 inches across, slightly vibrating, and orangey yellow in color. And that was their conscious energy. But from that conscious energy, they could still speak telepathically and they could still show me their last incarnation, which they did. So I went down the line and I was introduced to them all. And then it was time to leave. Art said it's time to leave. So we left, but they tried to persuade me to stay. And I said, no, I can't stay. I've got things I need to do. So we left. And I visited them several times with Art. until I got very comfortable that I could do it on my own. And I went and visited with them, as you would visit with your aunts and uncles in the physical realm. I would go and visit with them at those higher levels of consciousness. The feeling of love that emanated was always there, and they always wanted me to stay with them. Obviously, I said I can't. I've got things to do. I'm enjoying the physical, and I think I visited them for over a 2-year period, and then I found it was difficult to get back into my physical body. So I decided at work one day I would I'd not go back and see them again. But I thought, well, I'll have to go back and let them know I'm not coming. So that night I did just that. I relaxed. I went up to see them. Again, this feeling of love that came from them. And I told them that I won't be coming back anymore because I've got things I want to do. I'm enjoying my physical body. I'm enjoying what I'm doing. And I know that you will be here when my physical dies, expires, and we will meet up again. So I left. Again, I said they tried to persuade me. I went back into my body, and I've never been back to see them since. But I know that they're there, and I can call on them. If I need help, I'll ask them to help me with this, that, or give me some direction or whatever, because we are all connected through that conscious energy. So yeah, that would be that was quite a lesson really for me, because it didn't sit me down in the classroom as they do with some experiences. They gave me an experience itself. And that experience, bearing in mind, I was already used to traveling outside of my body I say when I was 9, when I initially was able to do that, I would only go locally to my grandparents. But to go and travel outside of your body with someone else and then travel to the higher dimensions, that was quite unique, really. And that, again, I couldn't have done that without the assistance, the education, the experience that was given to me through art. So yeah, but again, I think we all have these abilities, but we just need to nurture them and be educated within these areas.
Right. Yeah, I've listened to probably hundreds of NDEs, and that sounds a lot like an NDE.
Does it really? Okay. Well, that's the NDE is the only modality of contact that I haven't had.
You might not want to.
I don't want to, not yet.
Right.
Wait until the final one. But
Sure.
I think because I've been educated over a lifetime and slowly, and they don't deluge me with information. It's a little bit at a time. So I've been comfortable with it. I've been getting on with my life, but at the same time, I've been educated in consciousness. So an NDE, I've listened to people that have had NDEs. In fact, I have a friend of mine, Edgar. He's had 7. But the information that he's given are just amazing. It's like a shortcut to awakening to the fact that we are spiritual beings, and we have a physical, but we have the spiritual side. So I don't particularly want one of those anyway. I'm happy with the education route that I've been given. So yeah, but obviously I understand that you interview people that have had NDEs, and I say I listened to even Alexander, who's a doctor. In fact, I think he was a neurosurgeon.
He was,
and he had one. Well, it changed his whole perspective. He had an understanding of the brain, how it worked. He operated on the brain, but then he had an NDE, and it opened up a whole new reality to him, which was greater than the physical reality that he was working in, and very successful in what he did, I'm sure. But I know he speaks out about it. He's written a book. I haven't read the book, but I listened to him talking one day. But it's very interesting. I speak to lots of different groups now, and everybody's got bits of information. I spoke with a group yesterday, and they have information that I have, but they've only got little bits of it, and I can help them. And then it's interesting when other people talk about the same experience that I've had. It's really confirmation for me that, you know, we are evolving as a species. We have to do it on our own, but the higher conscious beings, the extraterrestrials, are here to assist, and we shouldn't fear them.
Yeah, the NDE phenomenon is very interesting. And what you're alluding to essentially is that you don't have to die to have that experience if you have the right education and training skills.
Exactly, yes. I think the NDE is a shortcut to the higher conscious beings, the extraterrestrials, are giving some people to wake them up and
Mhm.
then give them knowledge and information. Well, I get downloads of information. I was sat by my pool a while ago, and I'm just sat there relaxing, and I was given information about the quantum unified field theory, and I
Mhm.
knew nothing about it. It was explained to me in an instant. And again, with I'll explain what a download is. It's a large amount of information that comes into your brain in an instant. You
Mhm.
don't study a book for years or whatever. It's just there. It just comes. And on this occasion, I said to them, look, you just give me all this information about the quantum unified field theory. And that was part of my education to understanding consciousness itself. And
Mhm.
I said, can you show me a craft as confirmation that you've given me this information? A craft appeared immediately outside of my pool cage. I'm fortunate I have a pool here in Florida. I went inside to get my wife. I said, "What, Sandy? There's a UFO outside. Can you come and have a look?" She came outside. Second one appeared. Third, four, five,
Mhm.
seven in total.
Wow.
Flew silently over our heads, not very high. Changed direction by about 80 degrees, and then disappeared sequentially as they had arrived. So again, it was that confirmation for me of the download. I I asked them for the confirmation to show me a graph. They went over the top and showed me seven. So I was quite happy with that. And my wife witnessed it as well. So it, like I said, there's so many different modalities of contact that they use. And I say I don't particularly want an NDE. I'm happy learning by experiences.
Right. I think the purpose of the NDE is to force people who are stuck in the logical linear thinking mind to expand their consciousness or confront something that they can't explain with modern science. And then that sort of wakes people up.
Yes, I would agree with that totally, Jay. Yes,
Yeah.
and it's interesting how they're choosing a lot, and they are choosing these people,
Mhm.
choosing scientists
Right,
who
right.
are in say indoctrinated might be the wrong word, but they have a discipline. The scientists, it's
Mhm.
a discipline. They learn that discipline and they research and expand that. But
Yeah.
outside of that discipline, they don't see the bigger picture, the greater reality, as it were.
Mhm. So I had an experience with a craft once, and the craft itself seemed to be conscious itself. So, does that make sense with your
That's I
worldview?
can tell you a story about that. Yeah, that does make sense. And
Okay,
again, you see, you're getting information that I already have. I already know about that. I can
sure.
even create a conscious craft through thought and consciousness itself.
Hmm.
But initially, I think we touched on traveling outside of the body, traveling on the astral plane. Very often, I would just do that for enjoyment. You can travel and go everywhere and see things. It's quite amazing, really,
Hmm.
and quite relaxing. And on this occasion, I was traveling outside my body on the astral plane, so that the second level of consciousness, not as high as traveling as pure conscious energy, the second level, as it were. And a craft came alongside me, and the craft was conscious energy. And Art and D, the two beings that materialized in my bathroom, were on the craft. They invited me on the craft. As I went through the skin of the craft, I could feel that conscious energy. I
Hmm.
went inside, I spoke to them, and I've met them many times this way. And on this occasion, I said, let me see if, again, it's an experience. So there's lessons to be learned. So I said to them, let me see if I understand this correctly. We have three beings who are traveling outside of their body as conscious energy on the astral plane in a conscious craft that you have created. And I said, I see you. He said, yes, that's correct. And then I said, I see you as two pure conscious energy orbs. How do you see me? And Art said, Kevin, we see you exactly the same.
Hmm.
So that shows the level of understanding of consciousness that they've taken me to. And then at a later meeting with them, we were traveling, they came alongside in a conscious craft. And this Art said to me, Kevin, why don't you travel further? I said, well, it's all right for you. I said, you've got D as a partner and you've got a conscious craft. You can travel anywhere. And Art said to me, well, Kevin, why don't you create your own conscious craft? And I said, well, how would I do that? He said, through thought and consciousness. So I left, I came back to my body. And then I don't know, it was the following day or a couple of days afterwards, I thought I'll explore that. So I went to bed, I relaxed, I thought about creating a craft. I thought about having a circular craft with a big window so I could see where I was going, a big comfortable seat. I don't know why I needed a comfortable seat, but so I started the travel, as it were, out of body in this craft that I'd created. And as I was traveling, I could see all these, what I thought at the time was stars flying back at a huge speed. And I thought, well, I don't know where I'm going. Look at all these stars. And I felt I could be lost. So in fact, I'm very rarely fearful of anything, but I was fearful of getting lost and not being able to get back. So I ended the experiment, the thought experiment, and I went back to my physical body. So the following day, I thought, right, I need to do it better this time. I'm going to try again. I need to know where I'm going. So I need a navigation system. So I thought I'll design a thought transfer navigation system. So where I think I go. I then thought, well, I need a bigger craft and a bigger window and a bigger seat, So I don't know why I need a seat because I'm traveling out of body, but I decided to design that. And then I thought, I'll look at some star charts today during the day on the internet. And I decided I would go to Andromeda. So I'd got a place where I wanted to go. So I went to bed that night. I was thinking about it during the day, planning the intent of what I was going to do outside of the physical realm. Create this craft with the mind thought interface navigation system, and I would go to Andromeda. And the reason why I was going to Andromeda was because that's where Autumn D came from. And it was quite interesting. I went to a planet in the Andromeda system there, and I circled around this planet. It was a blue planet, not unlike Earth, but it had clouds everywhere. I didn't go down below the cloud base, but then I thought later, if I'd have gone down under that cloud base and that planet had been inhabited, would they see me as a UFO? Very often, I think that what would happen. And I think very often that's what we see sometimes when we see the craft, their pure conscious energy traveling into our dimension at this particular moment in time when you're able to see it. So, yeah, I mean, that's really extreme out there. I don't know anybody else that's done that. But again, the part of the understanding the conscious energy itself and what you can actually do with it in relation to. So we're not really confined to our planet. We have the abilities that the higher conscious beings have, that the extraterrestrials have, but we just haven't developed them. So, and I suspect because I've developed all the modalities of contact that they use, even to creating their own craft, is purely so I have an understanding of the power of consciousness, how we, the creators, we can create the reality that we desire. Unfortunately, within the societal systems that we have now, we aren't educated to those levels. But I think I touched on earlier, I think that's on purpose to control the population. So yeah, very interesting. I haven't met anybody else yet that has created their own conscious craft, but I'm sure I will at some point in time. Yeah.
Well, I'll work on it and get back to you.
Well, just think about it. It's only thought and consciousness, planning, intent. Ask for help with your guides, whether there be higher conscious being, extraterrestrials. And if you fail the first time, try again. On one occasion, quite interesting, I hadn't spoken to the council of eight for a couple of weeks, and I thought they're ignoring me. I hope they haven't abandoned me because I've been with them all my life. So I thought I'll use my new skill. I'll develop a craft, and I'll go and find them. So I created this thought conscious craft with the interface navigational system, and I headed off, and I went back to Andromeda because that's where he came from. And I looked all over, I couldn't find them. So I went to different parts of the galaxy, just using thought and consciousness as a navigation. I looked all over for them. I couldn't find them anywhere. So I came back to my physical body, and I woke up in bed, and I looked up at the ceiling, and all 8, there was O, D, Anna, Za, Ra, Tag, Chica, and Ola, all looking down at me. And next to them was this huge mothership. Bearing in mind, this is my small bedroom. And I was a bit annoyed because they hadn't been speaking to me for 2 weeks. And I've been looking for them, and I couldn't find them. So I said, I've been looking for you. Where have you been? And they said, yes, we know. That's why we're here. And then I said, how can all 8 of you be in my bedroom at the same time, looking down from the ceiling? And how can you have a mothership that size? And it looked like the mothership in, is it Close Encounters of a Third Kind? It was just like that. It was like a replica of that. And they explained to me how they could do that within space, time, and consciousness. I didn't understand it. I don't think I still do, actually. But that's the level that they're able to achieve. But fascinating that, again, that was an experience. They ignored me on purpose to see if I would use that new ability to go and find them. I did. I failed. I couldn't find them. But then they came back and gave me the experience of them all being in the room with the mothership. So, again, another experience. So, quite fascinating, really. It just shows who we really are, who we can become as a species, as a human species.
Oh, that's awesome. There are a few more things I wanted to ask. We're coming up on an hour here, so I don't want to take too much time. So you taught your brother how to talk to butterflies and other animals. What's the protocol for that? Or is it just, I remember you mentioned that you had to have a reason or something.
Okay, well, I can share that. I've already mentioned my brother, Michael. He's a retired engineer. I'm very proud of him because he set up his own business, being an aircraft engineer, very successful. And then he retired to Spain, but he was a nuts and bolts man. He was an engineer. And he understood I was on the spiritual side of humanity, as it were. He was aware of my experiences because I discussed them with him as a child. And he'd retired. He lived in the UK and he'd retired and he moved down to Spain. And I was talking to him one day. I talked to him several times a week, and we were chatting away. And he said, "Oh, Kevin, you should see the butterflies down here in Spain. They're absolutely huge." I said, "Oh, well, we have butterflies in the UK, but the smaller ones." And I said, "Well, why don't you go out on your balcony?" Because he has a balcony that overlooks the Mediterranean. And I said, "When a butterfly comes past, ask it to come and land on your hand." And he said, "Well, it won't do that, will it?" I said, "Well, just indulge me. Let's go and see." So he walked out onto his balcony. I said, "You have to hold your hand out. When you see a butterfly, ask it to come and land on your hand." Anyway, a butterfly came into his view. He held his hand up and he asked it. But I said, "You'll need a reason why you're asking. You want to look at the beautiful colours on its wings." So he said that to the weather. He said it telepathically or verbally, I can't remember now. But then the butterfly flew past. It went out of sight, turned round, came back, and landed on his fingers. So he was amazed. So I then said to him, "Right, what you need to do now, you need to ask it to go away, come back with a friend, and but you need a reason. And the reason is you want to compare the colours on the wings of the different butterfly." So it took off, it flew out of sight. It turned around, it came back with a friend. The original one landed on his hand, and the second one landed on his forehead. And I've got photographs of this. He was amazed by this. He clearly didn't understand what he was doing. He does now. And on that day, he had 12 landings of butterflies on him. What he was using there was consciousness, pure conscious energy for communication. That was one of the several things that we can use conscious energy for, communication. And he was communicating with the butterfly with a reason. And then I think the following day or a couple of days after that, he said to his wife, "Oh, let's go out on the balcony and we'll ask the butterflies to come and land on you." So they both went out. He asked the butterflies. I've got a picture of somewhere that she's got 4 or 5 butterflies landing on her arm, one on her glasses. Michael's reading a book and a butterfly comes and lands on his book and on his head. So he's now interacting with consciousness, shared consciousness with the animal realm, the insect realm, because we're all, and now it changes. When you get this extra knowledge, it changes. He now asks for help and advice from you might say the universe, the higher conscious beings, and it changes who we are to some degree. And in fact, I was speaking to another friend the other day. She's an experiencer, but she's been sat down in classrooms and taught, and she's very knowledgeable on certain subjects. And she was telling me, I was telling her about the butterfly story with my brother, and she said, her name's Sarah, and she said that I'll try that. So she tried it. She was out and she saw this butterfly coming past and said, held her hand out, said, would you come and, land on my hand? I want to look at the beautiful colors. But the butterfly responded with telepathic communication and said, no, I'm too busy collecting pollen to come and land on your hand. And it continued on. But you see, she has telepathic communications from the ETs, but then to get it from an insect, I mean, it just really shows who we are, what we are, and how we need to evolve. In fact, I've just seen something recently on my Facebook page, this lady that's communicating with animals. And I'm aware you can do that because I have an experience with a lamb. I went to a conference in Vermont, and the conference was on a farm. And we'd had a lecture, I forget the guy's name now, about animal communication using telepathy. Well, obviously, I'm comfortable with telepathic communication with my ETs and things. So I went to the lecture. I really enjoyed it. It was fascinating. And then it was time for a break. So we went outside. There were some picnic tables. We all had a coffee. We were chatting about the lecture. And there was a young girl walking with a very small lamb, fairly new, but I don't know how old it was, but it was only small. And I asked, oh, what are you doing with the lamb? She says, oh, we're trying to introduce it to people. It's not comfortable with people yet. It won't go up to them and interact with them. I said, oh, that's very interesting. So I thought, oh, I can use my newfound skill now and see if I can connect with the lamb. So I'm sat there having my coffee on this picnic table. I look at the lamb. Oh, I asked her what type of lamb it was. She said it's a merino lamb. So I've heard of them. So I sat down and I said to the lamb, I've just been in this telepathic lecture in relation to communicating with animals. And you're the first merino lamb I've ever seen. I understand that your fleece is very special and very soft. Would you mind coming over to me so I can feel the fleece and feel the texture of it? And nothing happened. And so I'm just back talking to the people I'm with. And then the next thing, the lamb is rubbing up to my leg. He's come right up to me. So I stroke it and I said, oh, thank you for coming up to me. I really appreciate it. You are a beautiful lamb and your fleece is very special and it's very soft. Thank you. And I thought, wow, it works, does this? So it wandered off. It wandered off. It started eating the grass and stuff. And then I needed another coffee. So I got up from the picnic table, went into the farmhouse, and it had a galley kitchen. The far end of the kitchen was where the coffee was. So I went to the far end of the kitchen, filled up my coffee, turned around, and the lamb was directly behind me. It followed me into the farmhouse. And then I came out, and the young lady that was looking after the lamb. And she said, Kevin, that's the first time he's interacted with a human, with anybody. I said, well, clearly, perhaps it's the first time he's been asked to interact. And that's the level of communication of consciousness. And you can apply that to the plants, the trees, the animals, the earth itself, the extraterrestrials, the higher conscious beings, the angelic realms, source energy itself. That's who we are, really, as a species. And I often wonder, perhaps we are here to learn to evolve ourselves as a species, individual learning at the soul level. I'm not quite certain about that yet, but I'm sure I'll get those answers at some time. But clearly fascinating. And after those lectures, I went and searched on the internet, and you can have a look about animal communication. And there are many stories about it. That's the beauty of the internet now. So, and I saw one with a black panther, Diablo, I think they called it. Absolutely fascinating, where this panther had some emotional issues because of the life that it had. And someone brought in an animal communicator to help with the animal, with telepathic communication. And it's an amazing story. She solved the emotional issues because, I won't tell you the story, because you want to go onto YouTube, it's still out there. It's called, just put Black Panther Diablo. That was his name. He changed his name, but it's fascinating to watch. And there are others as well. I saw one with a guy with a condor, huge bird. It'd fallen out of its nest, and I think it was in Peru, and he'd reared it. He'd reared it. So when it got to adult size, it flew off. And it comes back once a year, around about the same time. And there's a picture of it coming in, it's flying in, this huge bird comes flying in, landing, runs up to this guy, envelops him with his wings. I mean, that's just love across species, really.
Wow.
And that's consciousness as well, shared consciousness. The bird appreciates, they're solitary creatures, but he appreciates the human that gave him the life that he had. So, and there are many things like that. Again, we have to educate ourselves. We have to become citizen scientists, and the internet allows us to do that because our educational systems are very limited. We're just educated to a level where we're useful. Like my brother was useful to repair 747s, you know. So, but we don't stray outside of that. It gives us a lifestyle. It gives us an income. It gives us a status to some degree. Things that are important to us in the physical, but outside of that, there's a whole new world, an expanded reality. And once you realize that, it's you look at the world in a different light. You really do. I've got a large sycamore tree. I live out in the country on 5 acres. I'm very fortunate, and I've got this old rocking chair under a sycamore tree, and I'll sit there for half an hour, 20 minutes, half an hour, and just immerse myself in the conscious energy that's around us. And if you sit and you're quiet, watch what's going on. The leaves are falling. You can see the trees slightly different size from yesterday. Some more leaves have grown. There's animals, there's insects. They're all around you, but we don't have time to sit and watch them. I was sat there one day, and there was this, we have huge grasshoppers in Florida. And I saw this grasshopper, and I have a knowing sometimes that something's going to happen. And I knew this grasshopper was going to land on me. So I'm watching it, and it jumped about 20 feet towards me. Then it jumped about 10 feet to the right-hand side of where I was at. And I was looking at it, and I said, I know you're going to come and land on me. And it jumped back to the middle, and then it jumped and landed on my stomach. And it was a big, ugly grasshopper.
Yeah.
And it was walking up my jumper, my shirt, sorry. And I had an open neck shirt on. And I said, I don't mind you landing on me, but don't go near my open neck shirt. You go up on my shoulder, and you can sit there as long as you want. It changed direction and went and sat on my shoulder. So these are the levels of contact that we have with the, I mean they are quite ugly, but that's the level of contact that we have with them.
Yeah, I was intrigued by the animal story because when I was a kid, I did the same thing with dragonflies and then cats and all this other stuff. And now animals, I seem to have a communication with them, maybe not to that level, but it seems like they enjoy my presence.
I'm sure they do. They appreciate the fact that you appreciate them, and you come to their level of understanding of consciousness. So they've taught you something by reaching out to them. I've just finished with an experience with a dragonfly that I had, since we've just been discussing that. And I went out one day, and there was a small dragonfly, beautiful blue colours on it, and it was stuck in some netting. I tried to release it. The netting was covering my vegetables. I tried to release it. I wasn't able to. So I went back inside, got some scissors, and cut the netting around it. It was very delicate. I didn't want to harm the dragonfly. And I cut with the last strand, and it flew off. It just took off. I thought, oh, that's good. And it wasn't injured. I thought, that's good. I thought that's the end of that. Then I went out later on in the day. I took my dogs out, and I went and sat on my front porch, again, just relaxing, watching the nature. And a dragonfly, exactly the same size, exactly the same colour, started flying around me, round through my legs, came up to my eye level. I held my hand out for it to land on my fingers. It didn't. It came up to the fingers right at the end, but didn't land. I suspect that was the same dragonfly. But then later on in the day, I went out again with my dogs, and as I walked past my flower bed, all the dragonflies that were there stopped eating and followed me as I walked with my dogs. So I suspect that they then communicated to the other dragonflies that this
Mhm.
guy's okay. But then later on, I don't know the lifespan of dragonflies. I don't know much about them. But I was pressure washing my driveway, and this big, beautiful dragonfly, same color but full size or 5 inches in length, probably. It started flying around me, and I nearly hit it with the pressure washer. And I turned it off. I said, "Oh, be careful! You know, it's dangerous." It flew around me, around my legs, around my shoulders, and landed on my forehead. And I think that was the same dragonfly
Mhm.
that I saved when it was a young dragonfly. So yeah, when we have that, uh, I've got a window here. I've just looked out the window, and I've got a crow that comes. And a few months ago, I watched a documentary about crows, and I thought, I don't have a crow. I don't have any crows in my life. I'd like a crow in my life. Following day, a crow turns up outside, so I feed it, and I put some more food out for it, and then it came every day, and then it calls its friend, and now I've got 4 or 5, and the first one will come, and if there's no food out, it'll ask me for some food, so I'll go and put some food out, and I just looked, oh, he's here now, look. He's walking up and down, he'll be wanting some food, but that's the level of connection that we can have with nature, with the earth, with the higher conscious being. So again, I'm grateful and feel privileged to understand all this. It does make for a much happier life when you appreciate. And some people have some terrible lives. I know. I realise that. I am fortunate, but hopefully, listening to the podcasts of many others that speak out now, it will help them.
Mhm. I think so. So before we close, I know you mentioned that you have one book out, one that you're working on, and then you also have a statement for community disclosure or something like that. I don't know if that's on
Yes,
your website or where
yeah. I'm
people can
working.
find
I'm
that.
working at the moment in relation to reaching out to our ETs
Mhm.
for what they call the reveal globally of their ambassadors. So I'm working with different groups. I've been
Mhm.
working with Rebecca Hardcastle Wright and her Exo Conscious community, and
Mhm.
the members within that community all have abilities, all been educated by the higher conscious beings, by extraterrestrials, by their guides, by the angelic realms, some of them. So I'm working with them and others to communicate with our ET star families and invite them for that initial first contact. I don't know how we're going to do it yet, but if anybody's interested in the exo conscious community, you can just Google Rebecca Hardcastle Wright.
Okay.
And Rebecca worked with Edgar Mitchell in Noetic Sciences many years ago. He
Mhm.
was the sixth man to land on the moon. So she's very educated, very knowledgeable, and the whole community is, I think, very, very special. So because it's a group of people who have these extra abilities,
Mhm.
these psychic abilities, and we feed off one another. We share the information, and I'm currently working with the assistance of others to the reveal globally, and that will change humanity's course if
Mhm.
we're able to do that. And they've tried in the past and been unsuccessful. I'm hoping this time that we will be successful,
Mhm.
because if we don't, well, I've been told by my extraterrestrial friends that we've reached this level of technology in the past and destroyed our societies.
Mhm.
They don't want that to happen again. They want us to evolve with the technologies,
Mhm.
with their shared technologies, but then the evolution of humanity itself to have an understanding of consciousness. So that's where we're headed. And there are others working towards it as well. It's not just me. I know of many others that are working towards it. So yeah, but I think it's exciting times ahead for our
Yeah.
species, for humanity.
Do you think that they'll ever intervene?
No, they've told me they won't. They've told me that they will only intervene if we start a nuclear war. That's the only time they will intervene. We have to educate ourselves. We have to then get to a level of education where we can invite them at their level of consciousness. I'm already at that level, and others are as well. I've met others who we've called in the craft, and the craft will appear when we
Mhm.
ask them. And another friend of mine, Costa McCrease, he has etletstalk.com, and he promotes the E5 groups. Those are people who just get together with family and friends, sit out in the backyard and ask the ETs to show them a craft. A craft will appear, it'll flare up. Some people get telepathic communication. But within his connected groups, there are over 1 million people now globally reaching out to the higher conscious beings, to the star families. So we are gradually realizing that they are there. We're part of their extended family. I'm sure if I am, there are many others that are. I suspect that we were seeded here many, many millennia ago with the different species, and we've been left on our own to evolve, and we've got to this stage now. But they may have like a Star Trek. They're not allowed to interfere within different cultures that they come across. So,
Right.
so I've been told that we have to do this ourselves, and the request for them to reveal themselves has to come from a request from the citizens of Earth. They've tried with our governments, and our governments are not really interested at this moment in time. Although they are releasing more information, perhaps they've changed that policy now, and they are open themselves to contact, because if they want to do that, I'm sure they can. They must have experiences within our government bells. I'm talking global governments now, not just our government here in the US, global government. So we'll wait and see.
So if people want to reach out to you, is that something you're open to?
Oh yes, without a doubt. My email is kevinjamesbriggs@gmail.com. So it's just my name at gmail.com. My website is Kevin J. Briggs, just the initial J, kevinjbriggs.com. And on there, if you want to get a copy of the spiritual consciousness, the personal journey, which there are some things we've spoken about today in this book, and you can order on that website or go direct to Amazon and order from Amazon if you're interested in learning a bit more. My second book, I have it written now, but I haven't got it published yet, but I will do hopefully sometime this year. I'm busy doing other things at the moment. So.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Okay, no, you're welcome. Thank you, Jay, for inviting me, because as I say, without you, I can't get the information out there. And it's no good me just keeping it to myself, especially as I've been asked to share the information now. So, and it's given me, I'll be 70 next year. It's given me a new lease of life. I've got something to do, something to get up for in the morning. And I've just got 2 new puppies, 2 new German Shepherds. So they're keeping me busy. So my life is full. I'm happy. So that's the key.